Hi, this is Justin Calvalle with Engineering Pro Guides. This is another FE Mechanical exam video on Section 3, Computational Tools, and this is Part 2, Spreadsheets. So spreadsheets refer to commonly used formulas that are used in Microsoft Excel or other similar computational programs. In the NCS FE Reference Handbook, there is no references on spreadsheets. There's no summation of the basic operations or the commands or the items that we're going to be covering in this video. I guess it is just assumed that these are understood because they're used in everyday practice for mechanical engineers. The intent of the spreadsheets is to simplify calculations, increase computational efficiency, and be able to quickly change variables and outputs to output data in a presentable format. And the benefit of spreadsheets is that you can do calculations over like a large quantity of numbers and variables. So the first aspect of spreadsheets that you need to understand is that a spreadsheet consists of an array of cells labeled by a letter for each column and a number for each row. So when you call out a specific cell, you call out the letter and then the number. So for example, if you're looking for cell A1, we go to column A, then row 1. So A1 has an X here. D5, so we go to column D and then row 5, and we see that there are 3 X's here. Within each cell, you can have letters like this, a series of letters, or you can have numbers, numerical values, and it can be in any kind of units where if it could be in an integer, a decimal, scientific notation. And the other thing that you can input into cells is formulas, where you can compare numbers, add numbers, subtract numbers, do any sort of operation, and also compare things logically, like greater than, less than, or equal to. If-then statements. There is a summation or a compilation of all the different operations that you can do in spreadsheets inside of the FE Mechanical Technical Study Guide, which can be found on the website engproguides.com. But here is an excerpt of this one. So we have all the different operations, a brief description, and then an example. So we have a lot more inside of the Technical Study Guide. So for example, I'm just going to run through some examples. If you have this table here and you were going to calculate a formula, let's say the sum of B3 and D4, we would go to column B, row 3, value is 6, then D4, value is 8, and since we're doing the operation sum, we add them together and we get a result of 14. Other operations or things that you can do with that same sum function is get an entire array. So this one starts from B2 to D5. So we go from B2 all the way to D5. So what this means is that you go from B2 to column D and then add all of them up to row 5. So we get all of these in here. The same thing can be done for an average. We have a COUNTIF one in here. It's a comparison where we are looking at, again, the entire array between B2 and D5. So this entire array right here. And we're comparing it to 5. And we're going to count each one if it's greater than or equal to 5. So for example, B2 is greater than or equal to 5. So it's true. So we put a 1 here. Then we look at C2 and then D2. So C2 is greater than or equal to 5, so we have a 1 here, but D2 is not, so we have a 0 here. And we move all the way down, so we go B2 to D2, then B3 to D3, B4 to D4, and B5 to D5. That's how operations on arrays work. Okay. The next thing that you need to understand, so we just went over cells and operators, how to identify which cell you're in. The next thing that you need to understand is the differences between relative, absolute, and mixed references. So when you're populating spreadsheets, the cell position is going to be by default relative to its referenced cells, so that if you were to move an entire section of cells to another worksheet, all the formulas would remain intact because they're all relative to each other. So I think it's best to just go through some examples of this. So assume cell E2 was populated with the formula B2, C2, and D2, the summation of them. If this cell was copied to E3, then we're going to move each item relative to the previous cell. So we're going to, in E2, we're referencing B2, C2, and D2, but now we're moving one row down. So we're still, all our columns are going to be the same. We're still going to have a B, a C, and a D being added together. But instead of row 2, we are moving down one row. So we're going to be adding B3, C3, and D3. If E2 was copied to E4, then we're moving 2 rows down. So we're going B4, C4, and D4. And let's say we were to move to the right. Then if we move to the right, we are moving one column to the right. So our B2 term would turn to a C2, C would turn into a D2, and then D2 would turn into an E2. So this is an example of relative references. Absolute references are when you put in the $ before the row or column. And what this does is that it locks the reference point to that specific cell. And so when you move it around, it's always going to refer back to that same cell. So let's say we're looking at E2 again, but we're adding up the locked version of B2 and then the relative version of C2 and D2. So when we copy this down into, let's say, E4, we're still going to be adding B2. That's going to remain the same, but the relative ones will change. So we'll have D4 and E4 instead of okay, so this is moving it into not E4, sorry, F4. So we actually moved one column to the right, and we also moved 2 columns down. So B2 was locked, but we moved one column to the right, so we're in D, and we moved 2 columns down, so we're in 4. And then the same thing for D2. We moved one column to the right, so we're in E, and then we moved 2 rows down, so we're now in 4, E4. Okay. So that's an absolute reference. But if you combine them, and you will create a mixed reference. So we're combining relative and absolute. So in this case, instead of absolute reference would have B, a $, then B, and then a $, and then 2. But in this one, we have a mixed one where the column is relative, but the row is now absolute or fixed. So if we have E2 as B $2 plus C2 plus D4, and if we copy that cell into F2, then the formula becomes C $2 plus D2 plus E2. If E2 is copied into E3, then our formula again changes. But the thing that I'm trying to get across here is that the $, has locked that value. So that value never changes. So we still have that 2 here. The 2 is the same. It's the same in all of them. It's just the ones without $ are relative, and so those ones will change as you move the formula to other cells. So that's all on spreadsheets, and if you have any questions on it, please contact me at my email address is inside of the summary, and you can also visit the website at engproguides.com. Thank you.